The wedding is a trap. We're going to mix drugs into the champagne and put Elizabeth to sleep. The moment that voice came through my smartphone speaker, muffled and distorted, it felt as if all sound had vanished from the world. I had just arrived at the walk-in closet of the villa that would serve as the day's venue. I thought I only had to put the final touches to complete my look, chosen to match the pure white dress. It was my younger sister Lauren's wedding. We were supposed to celebrate her new beginning at this seaside estate called Seaview Estate, the villa I had inherited from our parents. And yet, in stark contrast to the cool pearls gleaming softly at my fingertips, the voice I just heard on the phone belonged to Brian, our family's inheritance lawyer, and it was filled with unmistakable urgency. Elizabeth, can you hear me? You must not go to the wedding. Brian, what do you mean? I just arrived and I'm getting ready right now. The guests will be here any moment. He pressed on while cutting me off before I could finish. I'll explain later. I'm sending security camera footage to your phone right now. It's data from the hidden cameras you tested with the installer last night. 3 minutes is enough. No, even 1 minute will do. Just watch it. The sheer abnormality of his tone made my breath catch in my throat. Brian was a man so composed and unflappable that my father had once referred to him as my keeper of the vault. And that very man was issuing a warning with desperation etched into his voice. The call ended, and at the exact same moment, the notification sound of a new message rang out. Attached was a single video file. What appeared on the screen was the familiar living room of my villa. The gentle glow of the fireplace bathed an expensive leather sofa in warm light. Sitting there were Lauren's fiancé, Kevin, dressed in a pristine white tuxedo, and Lauren herself, radiant in her wedding dress. The two of them were leaning close together, clinking their glasses and laughing. They looked exactly like lovers standing at the very peak of happiness. But the moment Kevin opened his mouth, the footage twisted into a nightmare. Are you sure this is really going to work? What if she starts to suspect something? Lauren smiled dreamily and lifted her hand to cup Kevin's cheek. There's nothing to worry about. My dear sister trusts her family completely. There's no way she would ever doubt the celebratory champagne I hand her. 1 sip and she'll sink into a deep sleep. When she wakes up, she'll be in a quiet room with iron bars on the windows. Their laughter echoed throughout the living room. The smartphone screen went dark, and the cheerful music drifting in from the living room seeped into my ears, clinging there like the background music of hell. Just then there was a soft knock on the closet door. It was Brian. He had slipped in through the back entrance, careful not to be seen by anyone. When I opened the door, he took one look at my face and seemed to understand everything without a word. In his arms, he was holding a thick binder. There's no time, Elizabeth. Before they carry out their plan, there are things you absolutely need to know. The binder was placed on the heavy desk in the study, and he opened it to the very first page. It was densely covered with printouts of Lauren's social media pages, a full year's worth of records documenting her perfect daily life, a year during which I had been so busy with work that I had barely paid her any attention at all. But what Brian pointed to were not glamorous photos of parties or celebrations. Read this. It was a long post Lauren had uploaded half a year earlier, written entirely about me. I'm worried about my sister Elizabeth. Lately, she becomes furious over the smallest things and hurls cruel words at me. It pains me to share parts of the messages she has sent me, but please tell me how I can help her. What was attached were screenshots that were presented as chat logs between her and me. However, the abusive language written there was made up of words I'd never typed even once. They were carefully fabricated, false conversation records. This isn't all, Brian said quietly as he turned the page. Next came posts that subtly suggested rumours claiming that I had been asking our mutual friends for large sums of money as loans. There was even a disturbingly polite comment from an account claiming to be a doctor saying, Elizabeth's behaviour may be a sign of delusional thinking. A professional diagnosis is necessary. Of course, no such doctor actually existed. Everything had been meticulously arranged to isolate me socially and to construct the false image of an emotionally unstable older sister. The final, decisive blow was the wedding guest list. There were 2 names that Brian had circled in red pen. One was the most authoritative psychiatrist in the state, Dr. Harris. The other was a family court judge, Andrew Miller. Lauren had introduced them to me as close family friends. They're not friends. They're accomplices, Brian said calmly. This is the plan. After you lose consciousness from the drugs, Dr. Harris will diagnose you with an acute psychotic episode, and Judge Miller will sign an emergency protective order on the spot. It's a perfectly staged setup designed to strip you of your freedom and your assets, all under the guise of legality. A chilling sensation ran down my spine. This was no mere sisterly dispute. It was a meticulously crafted perfect crime planned over the course of more than a year. Why would Lauren go that far? When it comes to inheritance, our parents were supposed to leave everything to us equally. I've even been the one covering most of the maintenance costs for this villa. Brian did not answer my question. He simply opened the binder to its final page in silence and placed an old key on the desk. It was the key to the safe in my father's study, a heavy piece of iron that had never once been opened since my parents passed away. My father instructed me to give this to you when you turn 25, and he also said this: if Lauren ever reveals her true nature, give this to Elizabeth before that moment comes. My father had seen everything coming. With trembling hands, I opened the safe, and inside, among stacks of legal documents, lay a single envelope. On the front, written in my mother's elegant handwriting, were just a few words: to my beloved Elizabeth. Breaking the seal and unfolding the letter paper, I found my mother's feelings written there. If you are reading this, then your younger sister has betrayed you. Please forgive me for noticing the darkness in her heart, yet failing to correct it. Lauren has discovered the true value of our family's real inheritance. My mother's letter revealed a shocking truth. The Seaview estate was not merely a luxurious seaside mansion. Following the instructions in the letter, I pressed the hidden switch inside the fireplace in the study, and a section of the wall slid open silently, revealing a spiral staircase leading underground. Beyond it spread a space like a private museum, where temperature and humidity were perfectly controlled. There, quietly resting, were Impressionist paintings and Renaissance sculptures of the kind I had only ever seen in history textbooks. Their estimated value was $18 million. The letter ended with these words: Lauren knows about the existence of this collection. She intends to eliminate you, obtain full ownership of this villa, and keep everything for herself. This inheritance is not meant to be turned into money. It exists to protect our family's history and pride. Elizabeth, you must never hand it over to her. Lauren's wedding had been a grand pretext to secure permanent access to this villa. Clutching my mother's letter tightly, I slowly raised my head. Brian, I won't run away. I'm going to fight. I told him this when we returned to the study. But this would not be a reckless counterattack. I would expose the enemy for who they truly were and then trap them perfectly. First, we need to know our enemy. Brian, hire a trustworthy investigator immediately. Dig into the past of the man named Kevin, thoroughly, from money trails to personal connections. He looked into my determined eyes and nodded firmly. Then I picked up my smartphone as well. The person I called was Daniel, a friend from my university days who now works as a cybersecurity specialist. Daniel, I need your help. Lately, something feels wrong with my home network. I have this unsettling feeling that someone is watching me. This is purely for self-defense, but could you check the logs to see if there's been any unauthorized access? Daniel quickly grasped the situation and agreed without hesitation. Barely an hour later, shocking reports arrived almost simultaneously from Daniel and from the investigator Brian had hired. Daniel's report confirmed that my fears had been well-founded. Elizabeth, there's no doubt you've been breached. From a device believed to belong to Kevin, there have been persistent attempts over the past several months to access your PC and cloud storage. On top of that, I found some unencrypted data in his communications. The goods will be delivered after the ceremony. The deadline is strict. It sounds exactly like some kind of deal. Almost at the same time, Brian placed the investigator's report in front of me. It detailed Kevin's astonishing true identity. At least 3 times in the past, he had become engaged to wealthy women, only to have the engagements mysteriously called off just before the weddings, walking away each time with enormous settlements and breakup payments. He was, without a doubt, a professional marriage con artist. The report even included copies of what were labeled strategy files, in which his target's financial situations and psychological vulnerabilities had been analysed in meticulous detail. In my file, written in red, were the notes: exploit her inferiority complex toward her sister, and take advantage of her loneliness following the death of her parents. I whispered, my breath catching in my throat. This isn't just about money. There's an organised, large-scale fraud operation behind this, backed by an international art theft ring. Brian, contact the FBI immediately. This is beyond what we can handle ourselves. 30 minutes later, the person who appeared beyond the heavy doors of the study was Special Agent Jonathan Reed of the FBI's Art Crime Team. He was an old friend of Brian's, and his eyes carried the sharp, penetrating light that only years of experience could produce. I've heard the outline from Brian. This isn't a simple attempted fraud. It closely resembles the movements of the international art theft ring known as Prometheus, which we've been tracking for several years now. The documents Agent Reed spread out contained information on con artists who targeted artworks using methods strikingly similar to Kevin's. Behind every case, the shadow of Prometheus loomed. This is how they operate. First, they create fractures within the target's family and isolate them psychologically. Then, through legal means, they seize control over the target's assets. Once the desired artworks are secured, the original owner conveniently disappears through an accident or a vanishing. You are dangerously close to becoming their next victim. Agent Reed then revealed another shocking fact. According to our intelligence network, Prometheus sets a strict payment deadline with buyers of 48 hours after the wedding. Lauren and the others are in a position where they can't back out. If they fail, they risk being erased by the organization itself. The enemy's impatience was making them bold and careless. That recklessness was our greatest opportunity. At that point, Brian added new information as supporting evidence. We've also obtained a concerning statement from Ben, the gardener who has worked for this household for many years. He claims that several weeks ago he witnessed Lauren and Kevin conducting some kind of transaction late at night in the garden with unfamiliar men. It was most likely the drugs they planned to use. This testimony became a powerful piece of evidence confirming that their plan had been in motion for quite some time. Then I placed my final trump card on the table. Actually, I found this by accident in Lauren's room. It was a diary, expertly written in an imitation of my handwriting. Inside, entries detailing mental instability, such as "I can't trust anyone and I feel like I'm being watched," had been meticulously recorded over the past several months. Of course, every word of it was fabricated. They were planning to submit this as decisive evidence after I lost consciousness. Agent Reed let out a low whistle. Thoroughly prepared. With this, no one would believe you. Exactly, I replied with a quiet nod. That's why we're going to turn it against them. Under FBI surveillance, I'll create my real diary and add new entries. I'll write, "Kevin is hiding something. I have a feeling the secret lies in the safe in my father's study." And then we'll deliberately let them discover it. At my proposal, everyone in the room held their breath. This was a trap within a trap. The plan was set in motion with lightning speed. First, Agent Reed's team carefully unlocked the old safe in my father's study and installed ultra-miniature cameras and microphones inside it. We deliberately left the safe completely empty. Next, under FBI supervision, I added the final page to the fake diary that had been hastily prepared. What is Kevin's true objective? I found something in his belongings that looks exactly like the key to the safe in my father's study. Tonight, after he falls asleep, I have to make sure. It was poisoned bait, meant to suggest that I was beginning to uncover their secret and to drive them into panic. I then intentionally hid it carelessly in a place where Lauren would easily find it. The preparation of the trap did not end there. At Agent Reed's suggestion, we also launched a psychological operation designed to fracture the conspirators from within. One of his subordinates sent a single message to Dr. Harris and Judge Andrew Miller, respectively, from anonymous prepaid phones. The FBI is conducting a covert investigation on Seaview Estate. This is your last chance to accept a plea deal. If you stay aboard Prometheus's ship, you will go down with it. This single message was certain to create a fatal crack in their unity. Then I moved on to the final finishing touch. Just before the wedding, I visited Lauren's waiting room. In my hand was a small velvet box. "Lauren, congratulations on your wedding. This is something Mum once gave me, and I had it remodeled just for you. As a symbol of our sisterly bond, I want you to have it." What I offered her was a beautiful antique brooch. For a brief moment, she looked at it with suspicion, but whether it was my sorrowful performance or the words "sisterly bond" that moved her, she accepted it without protest. "Thank you, I'm so happy." She proudly fastened the brooch to the front of her dress. Of course, it was no ordinary brooch. Inside it was a state-of-the-art, high-performance listening device prepared by the FBI. With this, all of their conversations on the wedding day would be transmitted in real time to Agent Reed. Just minutes after my visit to her room, Agent Reed quietly spoke to me as I waited in the study, pressing a finger to his earpiece. They took the bait. Lauren just told Kevin that you might be starting to suspect something. It looks like they found the fake diary. From the bug hidden inside the brooch, I could hear their voices, thick with impatience. What do you think about that diary? It's probably just paranoia, but to be safe, we'll move up the plan. Let's finish everything as soon as the toast is over. They had bitten perfectly into the bait I had set. Then, from their conversation, decisive words about the safe leaked out. That safe is infuriating. Dad must have been hiding something in it. Don't worry. Once the ceremony is over, everything in that house will be ours. We'll just break the safe open and check what's inside. They still had no idea that the safe in the study they were about to head toward was actually the entrance to hell. And then the time for the wedding arrived. Beneath a pure white arch set up in the garden, I slowly walked down the aisle as the guests greeted me with applause. At the altar, Lauren and Kevin welcomed me with radiant smiles. Their smiles were perfectly staged, but the rough breathing and rapid heartbeat I could hear through the brooch told me everything about the panic hidden beneath those masks. I'm so glad you came. Lauren embraced me and whispered that in my ear. Her voice seemed to carry a strange mixture of pity and mockery. I lightly patted her back and whispered back in the same way. For your happiness, of course I would, Lauren. The vows were exchanged and the rings were placed on their fingers. Everything looked like a picture-perfect scene of happiness, yet my eyes caught the sharp gazes of Agent Reed's operatives, standing around the venue disguised as waiters. I could also see Dr. Harris and Judge Andrew Miller seated among the guests, clearly unsettled, glancing around repeatedly, no doubt shaken by the anonymous messages they had received. At last it was the final stage of the plan. I had been entrusted with the toast and I stepped up to the microphone. The guests' warm gazes focused on me. I delivered the speech I had prepared flawlessly. Memories of Lauren from our childhood and heartfelt words wishing for her happiness. Because most of it was true, my voice never wavered. As the speech ended, Lauren gave a signal, and Sophia, the catering manager, approached, carrying a special champagne bottle on a silver tray. It was a 1928 vintage, the finest bottle our father had left behind. I saved this especially for you. Lauren held out a glass to me as she said this. At the very moment I reached out to take it, just as planned, I staggered slightly and pressed a hand to my forehead. I'm sorry, I feel a little dizzy. With those faint words, I slowly collapsed onto a nearby sofa. The entire venue fell silent in an instant. Elizabeth. Brian rushed over, supporting my shoulders with concern. I did not miss the brief flash of panic that crossed Lauren's and Kevin's faces. To them, this must have looked like the perfect opportunity to accelerate their plan. It's all right. The tension of the ceremony must have finally caught up with you. Lauren crafted a perfectly worried expression and knelt down beside me. Come on, just take one sip. It's Dad's celebratory toast. Once you drink this, you'll feel better for sure. This fleeting moment of confusion was everything for us. For a few brief seconds, Brian pretended to tend to me, deliberately drawing Lauren's and Kevin's attention toward us. In that opening, Sophia, the catering manager who was working in coordination with the FBI, performed what looked like sleight of hand on the silver tray. She slipped the drug-laced glass I was supposed to drink beneath the tray and smoothly replaced it with harmless sparkling wine prepared in advance. Then she switched only the glasses that Lauren and Kevin were about to take, making sure they were the ones filled with the real drugged champagne. It all happened in the blink of an eye. Pretending to tremble, I slowly accepted the glass Lauren handed to me. Lauren and Kevin also picked up their own glasses. The three glasses clinked together with a dry, sharp sound. In their eyes, I saw absolute confidence in their victory. I merely brought the glass to my lips and hardly drank at all. Lauren and Kevin, however, drained theirs in one gulp, as if savouring the nectar of a celebration. After confirming that they had emptied their glasses, I prepared to give the signal. At that moment, I saw Kevin's face turn slightly pale. Loosening his tie, he tilted his head in confusion. I suddenly feel really sleepy. His words gradually began to slur. Beside him, Lauren stared into space with unfocused eyes and swayed unsteadily. Yeah, me too. Why? She probably never understood what was happening until the very end. It would never have crossed her mind that the poison she had prepared was coursing through her own body. As the guests began to murmur, Lauren finally collapsed onto the sofa, and Kevin too crumpled helplessly onto the lawn. A perfect silence fell over the garden. I slowly stood up and gently let the white silk handkerchief I had been holding slip from my hand. The instant the white handkerchief fluttered down onto the grass, those who had been playing the roles of flawless waiters and quiet guests moved all at once. What appeared from beneath their jackets were FBI badges and firearms secured in holsters. FBI, nobody move. The venue plunged into panic in an instant, but the strong-built agents quickly secured the area and began guiding the guests to safety. At the center of the chaos, Lauren and Kevin lay unconscious, limp as puppets whose strings had been cut. Agent Jonathan Reed knelt beside the fallen pair and called over the medical team. Conduct drug tests immediately. Identify the substance used and secure it as evidence. The medical team efficiently drew blood from both of them and carefully placed the champagne glass Lauren had been holding into an evidence bag. I watched the scene unfold in silence. The other two conspirators at the heart of the commotion, Dr. Harris and Judge Andrew Miller, stood frozen in place, their faces drained of colour. Already shaken by the anonymous messages, they seemed to lose all will to resist when the FBI revealed themselves. Two agents quietly approached them. Dr. Harris, Judge Andrew Miller, you are requested to come with us to the station on suspicion of conspiracy and attempted fraud. Without offering any resistance, the two were led away, utterly powerless. I watched as the social status and reputation they had built over the years crumbled away under the red lights of the police cars. With the guests evacuated and only the agents remaining, the garden felt like a place after a storm had passed. Brian came to my side and gently draped a blanket over my shoulders. It's over, Elizabeth. His voice was filled with relief and quiet compassion. I nodded slowly. Yes, but the real beginning starts now. The distant sound of sirens became the only wedding bells for the ceremony Lauren had dreamed of. The perfect trap she had designed was executed without the slightest deviation. With one exception, the one caught in the trap was not me, but her herself. The first thing Lauren and Kevin saw when they regained consciousness was not a warm bedroom, but the cold walls of an FBI interrogation room. The results of the drug tests detected a powerful tranquilizer in their systems, confirming the charge of attempted murder. But that was not all Agent Reed placed before them. There was evidence of the marriage scams Kevin had carried out repeatedly in the past. The contracts documenting the sale of artworks made with Prometheus, and every raw, unfiltered conversation recorded by the brooch pinned to Lauren's dress. There's nowhere left to run. Agent Reed delivered the words calmly. Cornered, Kevin betrayed Lauren without hesitation and tried to shift all the blame onto her. I was just following her orders. She planned everything. She was blinded by money? At that ugly betrayal, Lauren's face twisted as she screamed hysterically. There was no trace left of the refined young lady she once pretended to be. But what delivered the final blow was yet another trap we had prepared. A video appeared on the monitor in the interrogation room. It was footage from the hidden camera installed in the safe in my father's study. Just hours before the wedding, the two of them, provoked by the fake diary, were clearly shown sneaking into the study. Where's the key? That woman must have hidden it somewhere. Calm down. Once the ceremony is over, everything will be ours. We can just smash open a metal box like this. That's right. You're right. Everything in this house, those paintings too, will be mine when Elizabeth is gone. The conversation, steeped in hatred and sworn resolve to erase my existence. It became irrefutable proof of their intent to kill. The moment that footage began to play, the two of them fell completely silent. At last, they understood that they themselves had been made to dance perfectly in the palm of my hand. The fake diary they had prepared in order to frame me ended up tightening the noose around their own necks. In the subsequent investigation, the buyers connected to Prometheus were also identified, and the organization suffered a devastating blow. Testimonies from Ben the gardener and Sophia from the catering staff became decisive evidence that sealed their guilt. After everything was over, Agent Jonathan Reed came to commend me. Your courage and intelligence exposed a massive crime that we might not have been able to solve on our own. Thank you, Elizabeth. I quietly shook my head. The only thing I did was try to protect my family and its inheritance. My battle had truly come to an end. Several weeks later, I was sitting on the hard bench of a local courtroom gallery. The sight of Lauren and Kevin standing in the defendant's seats looked nothing like they had on that glamorous wedding day. The expensive dress and tuxedo had been replaced with dull orange prison uniforms, and the confidence that once filled their expressions had been reduced to exhaustion and despair. The trial proceeded overwhelmingly in our favor. The evidence submitted by the FBI was flawless. The camera footage from the safe, the recordings from the brooch, Kevin's history of fraud, and his connections to Prometheus. Their lawyers were powerless, and in the end, both of them confessed to all charges. The co-conspirators, Dr. Harris and Judge Andrew Miller, accepted plea bargains and testified to the full scope of Lauren's plan, avoiding prison sentences but losing every shred of their social standing. On the final day of the trial, I took the witness stand. The prosecutor urged me to speak about the immense psychological pain I had suffered and the sorrow of being betrayed by my own sister. But I did not speak a single emotional word. I stated only the facts calmly and plainly, and then at the end, I added this. I'm not here today for personal revenge. I'm here to show that exploitation and abuse carried out in the name of family must never be tolerated. And I am here to make clear how unforgivable it is to sell off cultural heritage protected by our parents and lineage for the sake of personal greed. My words echoed quietly through the courtroom. Lauren, unable even to grasp their meaning, merely stared at the floor with vacant eyes. The sentence was 15 years in prison. By the time the two of them return to society, the world will have changed completely. After the trial ended, I made a major decision. I chose to open the art collection that had been sleeping underground to the public for the first time. With Brian and a team of specialists, I renovated part of the estate and opened it as a small, reservation-only museum. Furthermore, I placed several symbolic pieces from the collection up for auction, and using the enormous proceeds as capital, I established the Anderson Sanctuary Foundation. Its mission was to support people suffering from psychological and economic abuse by family members like Lauren, and to provide shelters and legal assistance so they could achieve independence and safety. The Seaview estate, once wrapped in silence and loneliness, is now filled with gentle laughter and the presence of people brimming with hope. The cottages built on the grounds of the estate had become safe havens where those protected by the foundation could heal their emotional wounds and take their first steps toward new lives. This afternoon as well, a writing workshop hosted by Sarah, a former journalist, is being held on the garden lawn. The sight of women trying to overcome their pasts by putting their experiences into words was more beautiful than anything else. Lauren and Kevin continue to quietly serve their time in prison. There has been no contact from them, and there never will be again. I do not hate them, nor have I forgiven them. I simply no longer care. There is something I have learned over these past 5 years. Family is not defined by blood alone. It is a bond of the soul, formed by mutual respect and sustained through honesty and support for one another.